What did I just do there? How did I just move through that scale so fast? You're probably saying to yourself. Are you saying that, Rob? You're saying how did I move how did I move so fast, right? Through those boxes, because that did not sound very boxy. And here's the kind of gist of my playing is that I don't think, like I was telling you with the major scales, I don't think of these shapes in terms of boxes. I look at the whole neck as one big scale. Now, if you're not able to see that yet, let me show you two ways of playing this scale, combining boxes. And then this way, maybe we'll get you in the habit of seeing these connections. So we're going to call these expanded scales. So for instance, if we're in A minor, that's like what you might consider your first box. Then you have this box that everybody knows, and then you have this other box here. So why don't we just, instead of playing a box, stopping, going into a box, stop, going into a box, stop, let's just run through by connecting those three boxes. So this expanded shape is listed in your booklet that comes along with this DVD. So whip that sucker out and check out the fingerings and also get to know this scale very well. And I want you to start using this one. And again, we're just going to play a minor pentatonic with the blue note. So here's the way I'm going to play this. And you can always find this one, put your third finger on the root, on the A. And we're going to back up. We'll play the G first, but check out how this sounds. See how I just moved through those three shapes without taking a stop to go into another box? It's very liquidy type sound. Much better than just sitting in a box and going to another box, going to another box. I'll play that scale again slow. And this time I'll highlight the root notes and the blue notes. There's my root note A. Then shift up with your first finger. There's my blue note, E flat. There's my root note A. Now when you get up here, you're kind of in that second box. Shift with your first finger. There's my A again. There's my blue note. And my blue note again. So let me play that ascending one more time. Okay, the trick is when you go 1, 3 on the C and the D, then shift up to that E flat with your first finger. And then you play your E. Okay, now descending, I like when I get, here's my blue note, E flat, here's my A, my root. Shift to your third finger, because you can do this nice, right? E, E flat, D combination right there. And that's the whole shape. I'll play it one more time. Very cool. And that'll get you out of playing in the boxes. You're covering, look at that, double one box. So if you want to play this one, then you'll have just about the whole neck covered. Let's do another 3 of the boxes, but combine them in the same liquidy kind of fashion. This time you could find it by putting your third finger on the root, on the 5th string. Remember the first expanded one, third finger on the low E, there's my A, third finger on the A string. And this is what this box looks like. We're going to start it up here on the low E though. There's my A. There's my A, right? There's my A. Starts off with that little blues kind of thing. There's my blue note, that E flat. So here it is again. Right? Then shift. Here's my high. Basically just not even using your pinky for that at all, but I'm already getting, again, double the amount of space in by moving through these shapes, combining them. And then right here you're back at your high octave. Right, so everything kind of repeats again. A few other things that we want to do with our minor pentatonic or major pentatonic, depending on how you're looking at this, and we'll talk about that later, how to turn these minors into majors, just doing the relative major. is the bends. There's a lot of really cool hip bends in this minor pentatonic, in these shapes. Remember when you're string bending, what we talked about before, always practice bending in pitch. You got to bend on a target note. You can't just be bending strings. I hear that a lot of guitar players do. They're just bending indiscriminately, and it's like they're bending it sharp or they're bending it flat, and it doesn't sound good when played over the chords. So you really want to try to bend in pitch. I like certain bends here. Sometimes I'll come in with like a bend that you really wouldn't necessarily think would be a cool bend. Like for instance, again, we're in A minor pentatonic, playing over an A minor 7 to D major change, real simple 2-chord vamp. Like I like bending up to the G, to the flat 7. So I'll bend the F sharp a half step. See? So I'll come in with that bend. That's a nice bend, a bend that you wouldn't necessarily think about doing because technically your F sharp is not in minor pentatonic. It is in the Dorian mode. That it would be the 6th, but so I like bending. So I like that bend, and the other bend I like was the bend I was showing you before too, is the 9th, bending the 9th up to the flat 3rd, or the 2nd to the flat 3rd. And again, a half step. That's a nice bend. Nice way to check your bend when you're practicing. Make sure you hit that every time. Hit that bend. I also like bending the G up to the root, G up to the A. That's a whole step bend on the B string. We talked about bending that flat 3rd to the major 3rd. I do that all the time. Another nice bend, of course, is bending your C up to the D, your flat 3rd up to the 4th. Another nice bend, if you go up to this expanded position here. Now you could do 2 bends there. You could bend your D to the E flat, which is the blue note, half step, or bend it to the next note in the scale, E. Always have a target note in mind when you're doing your bends. See, bending that all the way up a whole step or a half step. You can do that same bend here. I'm bending up my D to the blue note or a whole step to the next note in the scale. So those are some really cool bends, and I kind of mix them up. The other thing I do when I bend a lot is I'll bend a note 2, 3, 4 times and then hold it and vibrato it. So you see how I can kind of bend the note and really milk the bend. And that takes a little bit of work where you're bending it up into pitch each time. And bend and vibrato is another thing that's very hard to do until you get the hang of it. A lot of guys have trouble with it. Because you got to bend up a whole step, for instance here, and then hold the bend in vibrato while you do. Some guys do it really well, like David Gilmour and Clapton and guys like that, Joe Satriani. They have that really nice vibrato on bends, which is not an easy thing to do. So the way that I'm bending the strings, I can get some really cool tones. And that too, left hand technique. So a lot of my sound is coming from the way I'm bending notes, the way I'm grabbing the notes, the way I'm digging in with my pick. So it's not all just the guitar and the amp. Its tone is truly in your hands and in your heart, I believe, anyway. Not necessarily what amp, what guitar, because it's the way you're playing the strings, the way you're hitting them, the way you're digging in. I tend to dig in. You hear a lot of rakes with my playing too. That's another cool thing to do. Here I'm raking the strings. Basically I'm muting with this muting technique where I'm leaving my right palm down, muting the strings, but quickly going from a muted to bending on this 9th. And you get these nice... So I kind of, that time I'm raked up, but I'm raking the strings. Stevie Ray Vaughan would do that a lot. Really throw in those rakes. Let me just put on some gain, and the notes will be ringing out a little bit more. So you get stuff like, might sound... Here I'm working the notes. So I can get several sounds out of one note just by the way I bend. So bend that note 3 times. Into a double stop. Is that flat third to minor third bend? Little trill. Double stop bends. That's all minor pentatonic stuff that we're just going over. But a lot of that sound is coming from the way that I'm grabbing the strings. I tend to kill the notes when I'm playing, you know? I have a very heavy attack, and that's how I get my tone. And remember, what we talked about before, putting in those passing tones is very, very important for outside color, because you want to dress up this scale. Like, I haven't talked about this note much, the A sharp or B flat note. The flat 2 is kind of a cool passing tone to throw in there. Now, I wouldn't hang on that over the A minor 7. That's going to sound very out of tune, but I'd play off of a hammer-on like this. And then you get that outside sound, but no dissonance, but it sounds outside. So I'm playing off of that. Stevie Ray Vaughan would do that a lot too. He'd hammer off of the flat 2 into a bend. So again, a lot of passing tones in there. So I want you to throw all that into the soup. And I'm going to play in about 1 minute. We're going to start a tape. But remember, I want you to use these outside slurs. So now I'm going to stay mostly in this part of the neck. I'll move around a little bit, but not much, because I want you to hear all these. And I'm only going to play one thing. I'll stay in A minor pentatonic. Maybe I'll shoot into a little A Dorian, but I'm not going to play over each chord. I'm just going to blast the same thing over both chords, because I want you to see what I'm doing here.